Thank you guys for coming. I really appreciate it. This summit is, all of us speakers are always intimidated when you see like these big, SQL celebrities presenting. So I know how important it is to pick a certain session, and it can be nerve-wracking. So I appreciate you guys coming to mine. So my name is Foley. The silence your phones. If you're my friend, I might pick on you, but otherwise you're okay with me. I can't believe there's so many new people to Summit. I wouldn't be here speaking if it wasn't for the people that are kind of, this community is really, really unique. I used to be a consultant and they had an Oracle wing, and not to pick on the Oracle folks, but this community is just a really good-hearted, good-natured community. So take advantage. It can help your career, and it never hurts to have friends that get your jokes either. So good deal. So my name is Foley. I am so excited to be at Summit. I went to work for Microsoft 4 years ago. And that year when I first started, I got to speak because I was still community. But they have loosened some clarified some rules to let regular people, they call us people in the field, come and speak at Summit. They didn't want it to be too heavy, Microsoft, so they would only give certain spots. So please, 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 I always really, really appreciate feedback, but I really hope you guys put in feedback if you appreciate our voice. I work at Microsoft, and I actually help customers implement things. And a lot of times, a lot of the sessions in the past have gone pretty heavy to the product team. So if you guys appreciate hearing a voice like mine from Microsoft, please put that in the feedback so they keep letting me come back, okay? But like I said, my name is Foley, and I am a data and AI cloud solution architect. I have big buzzwords in my title even. So this is definitely going to be a bit buzzwordy, but that's kind of the intent of the session, is to get rid of a little bit of the fuzz around the buzzwords. Okay. So this is what we're going to cover today. Definitely, what is AI? It is a big, would you guys say, how many of you guys think AI is still the king buzzword? Raise your hand. Yeah, kind of a little bit of the room. I don't know if containers have taken over. Containers is I don't know if they were going to fight in like a sharks and jets kind of fashion, if that would win. I think AI would win. But so we'll cover what is AI, and then also kind of set the scenario for the session. Demos. I will never do a session without doing a demo. Probably. Never say never, I guess. And then also weighing the different options for the different paths that we're going to explore together today. And then also a little bit of just project considerations, some things that I've seen my customers kind of struggle with, and then kind of a little bit of a bonus round of not technical related issues to kind of consider if you guys are embarking on AI projects. And then Q&A. I always love an interactive session, so feel free to jump in, ask questions. So, okay. So, what is AI? So, AI, in the HOPE definition, is just computers doing human-like stuff. And I am going to give you guys a little bit more bang for your buck, because what I kind of set out to do in this session was, I'm envisioning all these bosses out there. I'm not saying they all go to Gartner to get jazzed up on the buzzwords, but a lot of them are going out to Gartner. They come back, and then they have AI initiatives, and they come back jazzed up on the buzzwords, and then reaching out to Rich over here and saying, "Make AI happen in our company." I don't know what that means, but totally is anybody in here in this session because they're being tasked with making AI happen in their company? Okay, good. So that's kind of the vision that I had for this. And the bosses are a bit fuzzy on the terms as well, so I figured I'm just going to lump together a lot of the terms. So if it's doing data science in Azure or in Microsoft technologies, I'm going to kind of lump those together. So whether it's AI or machine learning or data science, I'm going to kind of lump those together because the boss is probably fuzzy on those terms as well, okay? little more bang for your buck. So like I said, the vision for this was I'm envisioning the boss coming back and making people, I'm hearing a lot of AI initiatives with my customers, but I've been around for a little while too. I'm not going to tell you how long, but I remember when business intelligence was the buzzword, and then I remember when big data was the buzzword. So I also am kind of envisioning the people, these bosses getting in their heads that, if we sprinkle AI on our big data, a unicorn pops out of Azure, it tells me the future, and then money rains from the sky, and they have ticker tape parades, and I get a big raise. That's a little bit of a stretch, but not a lot, really, from some of the. I love Satya. I love hearing him speak, but when you listen to some of these keynotes, it's like, wow, I'm jazzed up. I want to do these things, but how in the French toast do I do that? So that's kind of the scenario I'm setting for this. And Rich, I'm going to pick up you if that's okay. So we'll just say, me and Rich are friends, and his boss is coming back he's the last person in the room when the boss is talking about these AI initiatives. And so he and I are friends, and he's like, okay, Hope, that my boss is coming to me telling me I need to do AI. Tell me what technology, tell me what I need to do to make this crazy person happy and keep my job. Anybody want to guess what I'm going to tell him? The old SQL joke. It depends. I'm going to it depends, Rich. And then he's going to get mad at me and give me this face. And I have customers all the time. They get a little frustrated with me. I know Azure's big, and there are a lot of pieces, and there are a lot of parts. And then I tell them it depends, and they get a little mad at me. So that's kind of also a little bit of the reason I put this session together is to prove that, yeah, it really does depend, and we're going to weigh the options together and kind of go through that process together, okay? So, Rich, let's go back. We talk to your boss, and we say, okay, let's just narrow this down a little bit. Making AI happen is a little bit vague, Mr. Bossman. Let's figure this out. So, let's just say we get the boss to narrow down and pick sentiment analysis. Sentiment analysis is a pretty common thing. So we are actually going to go through and look at these different paths of doing the exact same thing in Azure. So we're going to do sentiment analysis in Azure, and we're going to do it in these 4 different. I have another slide that are other ways we could do this as well. This is by no means, and if you guys have any other ideas on what different ways I can add to this, feel free and let me know. But we'll go through 4 different examples of doing sentiment analysis, okay? All right. Now I got to go back on the squeaky stage. Crunch, 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 sorry. Okay. Let me get over to the demos here. So before I jump into the demos, has anybody heard of the Gartner hype cycle? I had never heard of this. I was telling somebody about this session, and they were like, oh yeah, the Gartner hype cycle. I was like, that's a thing? This is just something I kind of had a vision for, but this is actually on the Gartner.com, and I feel like, I was like, this is so perfect, and I'm an analytics kind of gal, so I love this. So I'm envisioning the bosses are definitely in the peak of inflated expectations. Rich is in the trough of disillusionment, and then we're going to, hopefully by the end of this, maybe be a little bit more in the slope of enlightenment. But I thought that was funny. So, all right. So path number 1, I want to call out Azure Machine Learning Service. So, and I'm the flow and the different. We're going to start at data science heavy and work our way down. Okay. So this is anybody data scientist in the room? Budding data scientist? I try and pretend to be one on TV. I come from a data background, so I'm a bit newer to the data science, and I'll kind of also explain where I fit in as we're looking through these different options. Oops, sorry. So Azure Machine Learning Service, just like at Ignite, there are a lot of different workspaces inside of Azure. We now have Synapse workspaces. We have different workspaces in Power BI. You also have an Azure Machine Learning workspace. So Azure Machine Learning Service is basically kind of a wraparound service to help data scientists and other data people productionalize models. There's a lot of process that goes involved in creating models that has a lot of different pieces and parts to it. And especially since I come from a BI background, that was the garbage in, garbage out, it's even more important in data science. You end up on the news if you get data science wrong, if you don't throw the right data at something. I always get, in Management Studio, if I write a query and things don't work right, I get, a little squiggly red line that's, tells me my syntax is wrong. In data science, I can build the crappiest model and throw the wrong data at it, and I'm not going to get the squiggly line. So there are cautions to doing data science, and the Azure Machine Learning Service helps kind of wrap around those things. So I'll zoom in here a little bit. So we have different attributes and different things here. Notebooks. A data science focused person, I've actually heard data scientists say they want to live all day in a notebook. They want to pound out R, Python code, and they want to live all day in a notebook. So we have notebooks. There are other things in here, data sets, different compute as we're deploying those different things. But this is the preview portal, kind of as you build an Azure Machine Learning workspace. This is kind of the landing page that you land on, but this is the preview version. Excuse me. Oh man, sorry guys, I don't mean to do the mic. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk to Azure Machine Learning Service from, there's my mouse. Oh, sorry. There we go. So if you're not familiar with notebooks, notebooks are basically, I think of them almost like Management Studio meets OneNote meets kind of HTML. So this is Azure Databricks, and this is just the notebook experience that I'm a little bit more familiar with. I started using Databricks. Databricks, for those that aren't familiar with Databricks, it's basically kind of an easy button in Azure to run Spark workloads. The big data buzzword, it seemed like we had the alphabet soup and all the different animals and hive, pig, those things. But Spark kind of rose to the top, and Spark kind of got, every good idea kind of gets stolen by all the different technologies. Spark kind of rose to the top. And then the notebook experiences, even Data Studio now has a notebook experience as well. So this is the interface that I'm going to use. I don't have to use Databricks notebooks. I could use Jupyter notebooks. There's Azure notebooks. Wherever data scientists are pretty passionate. I kind of remember like when the Kimball Inman guys, they would kind of duke it out on who's right or who's wrong. These data scientists are pretty passionate about their notebooks, and they're also pretty passionate about their frameworks. We had a fail fast moment when we tried to, you may see old references with Azure Machine Learning, something called Workbench. We kind of had that fail fast mentality of here's a nice notebook experience for you. They said, yeah, no thank you, no thank you. So what you do when you're trying to build your models in whatever notebook experience you prefer, excuse me, and you talk through it through an SDK. So I am going to show you a little bit of this. And this one here, there's a lot of different types of SDKs for this. Well, not different types. So there's a Python SDK for right now. It seems like Python gets a little bit more love. I don't know if it's a little more. It seems like it's gaining more popularity than R. So right now there is only a Python SDK for talking to Azure Machine Learning Service. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so the question was, to repeat it back, do I think that notebooks are, have an experience that makes them unique? Is that fair? Yeah.
Are they particularly useful?
Yeah, I think they are, especially because you're going to be connecting to different kernels a lot of times. So you're bringing different compute to your notebook. So that is definitely a unique experience. There is also kind of this, I think they're great too because you can crack them open, you can share them, you can put them on GitHub, and basically kind of have documentation plus images and links and those kind of things, and I can run my code all in the same place. So I think the transparency of them is kind of unique, and also you can mix and match different languages usually. In the Databricks flavor that I'm more familiar with, you can do R, Python, Scala, and SQL, and kind of mix and match the languages between the cells. So I think it is kind of unique that they are. But that's a really great question. Really great question. Any other questions while we're stopping? Yeah. Yeah. Oh wow, cool. Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah, and yeah, he was just mentioning for the audio that the Nobel Prize winner actually shared a notebook to show his work, which is really cool. Yeah, I think they're really powerful and unique, and it seems like they're being stolen from every different tool. It seems like is adding a notebook experience. I think I've enjoyed it, and I've been in management studio for a long time, so yeah. Good deal. But I kind of hovered in on the one piece here on this particular notebook where I'm basically initializing and talking, and I'm calling the Azure ML SDK. So I can, as a data scientist, so if I'm considering this path, this is going to be great for a data scientist. They can keep their head in their notebook all day long, pound out their R or Python in this case if they're talking to Azure Machine Learning Service. Do their Python and build and create those models. But something else too that they have, anybody in here business intelligence? I come from a business intelligence background, DBA before that. But kind of the data wrangling, the clean, does anybody nobody has perfect data. Data scientists in their dealing with data have to do a lot of data wrangling as well. There's a data prep SDK that kind of helps make things easier for that data wrangling of the data scientist as they're doing their code. Cool. So this is the data prep notebook I'll show. And then this one here is where I'm actually getting back to kind of the scenario that we built. The sentiment is this is where I'm actually building and training my model in code. And somebody that's not a data scientist, this gets me a little itchy. I'm newer to data science, I'm newer to Python, and this might not be the best path for me where I come from, right? So, but this is the actual process. And in the machine learning model creation, you're usually building and training a model. So you give it a set of data and say, here are the answers to what I'm trying to figure out. And then you have to tell the machine, this is a positive tweet, this is a negative tweet. So we're going to narrow in sentiment analysis of Twitter data, which is always fun, right? Living dangerously in Twitter demos. So this is a bit of that process. I'm going to sneak in one other example of using Azure Machine Learning Service that's a little bit more of a data person's path as well. So this is, in my Azure Machine Learning Service workspace, what I did was I threw my data at AutoML, so this automated ML section. Excuse me, let me zoom in. This section here in the automated ML, I can throw my data at different algorithms and have that process run through every different algorithm. It ran through 50 some odd iterations of different algorithms here. And you can see it figured out the accuracy of my data with those algorithms for me. I was like, great, I didn't know what the heck a sparse normalizer XGBoost classifier. That's a little outside of my skis as far as data science goes, but it said, yeah, your accuracy is pretty good here with this one. Excuse me, I got a little bit of a cold. But then I can download this model and then actually deploy it with other pieces of the Azure Machine Learning Service. Does that make sense? So I kind of snuck in a different path doing Azure Machine Learning Service that's outside of the notebook. Excuse me. Okay, so then kind of moving to the next piece, the next path. So this is path number 2, calling out. And this one is a little bit more my speed. So I did a lot of SSIS back in my day. I love it, and I do a lot of Power BI. So I love the clicky, draggy, droppy, GUI interfaces. I don't know enough Python yet to hammer it out and type it out myself, right? So this one is where we're actually, and you might have seen references to the Azure Machine Learning Studio. And this is not an official Microsoft. This is just a hope opinion. But they seem to be calling out visual interface. So I don't know if the Machine Learning Studio name is going away, but they keep referring to this as the visual interface for Azure Machine Learning Service. I know we don't do ourselves any favors sometimes with naming, but they should ask me my opinion. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, it is completely separate. Yeah, and this is the one that is in the service. So I think that's calling it. Yeah, and there are definitely differences in this one. I have different compute options. You had different restrictions with the Azure Machine Learning Studio of data sizes you could throw at it. It was pretty limited in the data you could throw at it. But in this case, there are more options. But this is kind of a process where, again, I'm splitting my data. So I pass in here. I start with my data set. I'm doing some finagling in between there of wrangling the data. Maybe I'm editing columns, or I'm doing different things in these other tasks here. And then I split the data out into 2 different paths. Let me zoom in for you. I split the data into 2 different paths, and then it's actually running these algorithms. So this is a little bit more my speed. So I'm newer to data science. I know I'm doing some kind of classification. I'm doing kind of a binary classification of positive tweets, negative tweets. And I'm splitting that data out into 2 paths and saying, here's the data. These are, test with this, and then check yourself with this other set of data to see how you did, okay? But when you get this, you can see I need a little help from some data scientists to figure out what's going on. I got a little error in this one, but this would be the process. And you can see we have different tasks, different modules, but it gives you a little bit. It's a little bit less hardcore coding in R and Python here. And you do have the options to throw in different R and Python modules in here. When you get it done, it's really nice. You run it, you can test it, and you can deploy it as a web service really quickly and easily. So, does that make sense? Any questions? So this is kind of path number 2. And this is, for a data scientist, though, they get itchy here. They want to sit in their notebook and type all this out. This is not going to be the path for the data scientist. This is definitely more my speed, as I'm kind of ramping up my data science skills, but this is a different path that I can get to build and train my model. One thing here in both of these different paths is I can crack it open. A lot of data scientists, if they can't crack it open and take a look at all the algorithms and all the, the hardcore R and Python and the math, they don't like necessarily the paths that you can't crack it open and have complete control over what's going on. So these might be 2 different paths if you need to build and have a lot of control over the model, but two different ways to get there, right? 2 different skill sets as well. Good deal. Any questions? Kind of moving down to another option here, so I'm going to call out, this is path number 3. So Power BI. Everybody Power BI? Woohoo! Yeah. No? Okay. So, so Power BI, gosh, it hasn't been too long ago. They allow now the capability to build models inside of Power BI. Definitely a different audience for this one. So I have some data flows. So what I did was I created a data flow, this Twitter analysis data flow. I'll pull it up and show you. So I have this one here, but I have one cracked open to where we can see this. I don't know if you caught, I always have in my bio, even the small one up here, I'm a big beer snob. I really like beer. I like drinking local beers wherever I travel. But I use beer data a lot, so I'm sneaking some beer data in here. I've actually, this is analyzing tweets where I've used the beer me hashtag. Yeah, are you guys on Twitter? Most of you guys on Twitter? We're very Twittery people at the SQL community. So I am one of those that I'll post a beer and I put the hashtag beer me on it. So this is an analysis of that beer data. But in Power BI, I can create a data flow, and this is actually cleaning up. This is very Power Query in the Power BI service, cleaning up this data set. But what I've done is I've created this data flow, got it cleaned up. Excuse me. And then once you have that finished and have your kind of data ready to go, this one here. So I have this data flow here, and if I click on this guy, you can see I already have one created, and it creates some of these entities for me, these other ones underneath. And I'm going to show you the process to do this. So this is my entity, and these are the things I'm trying to predict. So I'm trying to predict the sentiment. So if I do this one, I say next. You can tell this is definitely not the path for the data scientist as well, right? They want a lot more control over the model. So I'm not going to go through the full process here, but I'm going to say I'm mostly interested in negative tweets, maybe. But I'm trying to build a binary prediction. It figured out for me what I wanted to pick. But you can actually select a different one. It kind of looks at the data, what you're trying to predict, and then it tries to help guide you to the right model type. But it was correct. I wanted to do binary prediction. Then once you're done, you can then call it. So I actually created one that actually created a model that's doing the sentiment for me. Does that make sense? Not going to make the data scientist happy here at all. I also need to kind of determine what am I going to do with the data. So if I'm trying to build a web application or a mobile application and I'm trying to get that data, the data living in Power BI might not make sense for that path as well. So what I'm going to do downstream with these predictions is going to make a difference as well. If I'm living in Power BI and that's all I'm only consuming it in a report, then this might be a good path, right? And you can also do things as well like this. So, excuse me. Let me show you here. So, I'll skip to that one, actually, sorry. But again, I'll jump over here and show you. Once that model is created, I can then call it and use it inside of Power BI. You can also, so that's one path, but I'm actually building the model myself still a little bit. There's definitely some Power BI easy buttons to help me along here. Path number 4, I'll call out, is with, oh, sorry, go ahead. Oh, yeah. Well, yeah, all the AI features, that is a great point. Yes, yes, yes. I actually have one of the embedded SKUs running this one, but yeah, that beautiful diamond indicator, and yeah, that gets to a point I have in the slides later of that makes a difference as well. So yeah, no, thanks, Steve. So this is still where I'm actually creating the model, but let's just say Russ's boss, he doesn't care about we don't have a data science team at Russ's work. They just want to make sentiment analysis happen. So getting to the cognitive services, which are very much in line with like the strictest definition of the AI, machines learning and doing human-like stuff, is text analytics. So cognitive service and text analytics is one way where I don't have any data science skills. I don't want any. I trust you, Microsoft, to have built the model and trained the data. So it's on Microsoft to make sure those algorithms are correct, that we go through the process to build and train and throw enough data at these models to make them accurate for use. And then you're just calling an API, right? So, and you're basically paying for each call. So it can be relatively cheap, and you can also do some testing with it. So they have on the website a demo here that you can try it. But I did one here where I can actually call it in my Databricks cluster. So it's detached. Okay. So this is what it would look like if I was just calling the Azure Cognitive Service. I ran this earlier, so I won't run this again. But I'm actually calling out to cognitive services, and all I'm doing, I'm calling, you have keys that you use when you're calling out to these. So if you see here, the past summit is the best conference ever, and the attendees in this room are my favorite. Remember that in the evals, please. But you can see down here, if I zoom in, right here, the sentiment score comes back, and it's actually just returning back to me, even in the notebook. I can call this from my mobile application and have it do the analysis for me. But you can see here that's what that was doing. So that's a pretty positive analysis. If you're if you're trying to do things in Spanish, you could do that as well. So I don't speak very much Spanish, so I do know no bueno. So it's saying, yep, no bueno is a sentiment of 24. So the lower the number of the sentiment is, the less positive it is. And then there's French, and I took a lot of French. I lived in Louisiana, so they have that kind of French Cajun influence. I took a lot of French. This is the sentence that I remember the most from all of my years of French. Does anybody know what this you might know, do you know what this means? So this is c'est une affiche. That means this is a poster. And the only reason I remember that is because it sounds like you're saying tuna fish. So that is a pretty neutral sentiment here of 52. So about as neutral as you can get as far as sentiment, okay? And then you can see this one here. I also, terrible, horrible idea, the sentiment is low. Does that make sense? There are a lot of different cognitive services. And if you guys don't mind, this is the silliest example. I'm going to show you, I'm going to sneak a little bit of AI so you guys don't ding me on the text analytics. That's not very AI-like. So I'll show you one thing. There are a lot of different cognitive services out there to call. So sentiment analysis we're able to do. Actually, I'll save the other one for a bit. There were some announcements this week, or actually last week, that kind of threw me for a loop, and I had to change some demos as well. So I did the sentiment analysis in Power BI, right? Using a model that I built. May not make sense, but I just wanted to show you that you can. You can also use Power BI data flows. So I have that Power BI data flow where I actually call out to the cognitive services in Power BI and use that as to score my sentiment if I'm doing it in Power BI. But you can also do it. They threw me for a loop last week with this. So this is the Power BI desktop. And we actually have now, if I go to transform data here, I'll zoom in up here. And you can do it in the desktop as well. So Power BI has some options. If you're not going to make the model inside of Power BI that you want to use yourself, you can actually call out to different services. And text analytics is one. Doing things like pulling out the key phrases, so we can impress the boss a little extra and pull out the key phrases and also do the sentiment. And then Rich is going to get a bonus, and then he's going to owe me a beer. So, good deal? Yeah. Let's do some testing afterward. We'll have some fun. Yeah, I always play. My son also likes to throw questionable words at some of these cognitive services, and we have a little fun with that. But yeah, no, it seems pretty accurate. But you can see, like when we were doing, I don't know if you guys noticed, or maybe I didn't scroll down far enough. When we were actually building the model, it was going through and looking at emoticons. So these are happy, all the happy faces. It was actually saying, hey, if it has these characters in it, it's that. I'm assuming those brilliant, Goodwill Hunting types back at the Microsoft office that are deep data scientists, they probably have done that as well. But yeah, like I'm very sarcastic sometimes, and I could see where sarcasm. I don't know that the machines can pick up on my sarcasm, but that would be something. That would be something, right? So there are definitely lots of different ways you can tie in these cognitive services if you don't have data science skills. And I know, like, Satya is very passionate, and Microsoft is very passionate about making AI accessible. So the cognitive services are really definitely one of those, helping customers that don't have deep pockets to pay data scientists to build all their models, a way to do it really easily, and that with just traditional developer skills. That makes sense. Good deal. Okay, so I want to sneak, like I said, one more. We're doing okay timing-wise, right? Yeah. So I'm going to sneak this one in. Like I said, I'm a big beer snob. So I have done the silliest thing so I can tell people certain jokes. So custom vision is a cognitive services where you have a little bit more flexibility at the data you throw at it. Text analytics, they tested that with whatever data sets made sense to the hardcore data scientists that built those cognitive services. This one is actually where I throw data at it to help me predict something. So I have uploaded pictures of beer. And I'm an IPA kind of a gal. So I said, Hope likes these beers, and Hope doesn't like these beers. And what this will do is predict if Hope is going to like a beer based on a picture. So I've snuck some more AI in here that's kind of in the vision vein. That's pretty cool. But if I go here and do a quick test, I threw not very much data at this, you can see. I even just threw the minimum. You have to have five different, if you're trying to do a yes, no, I had to have 5 different yeses, 5 different nos. Data scientists need a lot of data, so I'm going to have to do more research to get better accuracy for my data model here, right? So when I tell my husband I'm going to go work on my data science models, I might actually be going to the bar. So super silly, but this is Hope demo land. I like to have a little fun, right? So I'm going to actually throw a beer at this data set. And I'll zoom in so you guys can see. The probability that Hope likes this beer is 99%. So it's actually just kind of analyzing the picture. So the custom vision really kind of helped me understand the data science concept of needing more data. I was working with a customer. We were actually analyzing pizzas in a real use case, not a silly demo data use case, but we were actually analyzing pizza. They were interested in the quality of their pizza. It had to be up to the cheese had to be all the way. They had very strict guidelines on what a good pizza looked like. They had tons and tons of pictures. So we started doing we started analyzing cheese pizzas. We got our accuracy pretty good. But when we started throwing a sausage pizza at it, the accuracy went way down because it didn't know how to handle that data set. So in this case, I am not only going to have to drink all the kinds of beer that I like, I'm going to have to drink them in different glasses, every different glass type that they have at the bar, so that the machine can understand that Hope likes this beer, and these different glass types also come into place, not just the color and those kind of things. But it was pretty good, and like I was actually, you saw the data set I was using. It was pretty vanilla glass looking, no backgrounds. So this is pretty amazing stuff, right? Oh, it could have, yeah, it very well could have, but I need to do more research and make sure that this is accurate. So silly, so silly. What's that? What's that? I do need volunteers to help me. Yeah, absolutely. So, but that's a kind of a fun, silly example. So let me jump back to the slides now. Okay, so we built sentiment analysis models several different ways. Well, and the last way, I guess, we didn't really build it. Microsoft built it. But the different things we kind of considered in the process here was the skill set. Heavy data scientists, they give them a notebook. They're going to be happy. Let them take that path. How much control? Where the data lives. Like if we need the data not necessarily to be in Power BI, that might not be the best path for it, right? And then also where the results will be consumed are definitely things to consider as well. And I have here, actually, how better to analyze these different things. This is something I did. And even in the time I built these slides, I got a little bit antsy. And I was like, oh, Ignite, every time they make an announcement, I need to re-update these slides. I was like, well, I'll just do a Power BI example here. So I did a Power BI report, kind of trying to analyze the different skill sets, the different things we're weighing. So skill set, flexibility. So I have the different skill sets here, and this is just a hope scale. This is just kind of me kind of eyeballing and weighing out the different developer skills needed. So I'm talking about developer skills as far as like .NET, doing API calls and those kind of things. And then the data science skill sets needed, kind of from a 0 to 1 scale. Also, flexibility. So how much control over the model I have. You definitely have limited control. The reason I put the cognitive services, that little tick up there, I think I put it at like 15, was the custom vision and like the custom speech. There's also a custom speech one as well. So being able to throw a little bit of flexibility at the data I'm throwing at it gave it a little bit of a bump in the control over the model aspect. But you have very limited control over those cognitive services. And then also, sometimes the data needs to be in Azure or makes more sense to be in Azure. There are definitely options. Cognitive services, you can actually use cognitive services on some of those little devices. They gave you the Oprah AHA thing at the keynote the other day. You can actually deploy some of the cognitive services. There's a limited skill set, limited ones that you can put and deploy into in containers. Excuse me. But a lot of there are definitely things to weigh on where the data lives as well. Good deal. So let me jump back to slides again. So I'll jump through these slides. This is old news data here. So I wanted to show you guys the actual Power BI report than this. But there definitely are other options. So there are on-prem options as well. If you guys have, your data needs to live on-prem. So machine learning server, there are machine learning pieces inside of SQL Server, 2016 on up. Stream analytics, and then anywhere where there's an ML library, you're going to be able to do some data science functions as well. So there are ML libraries all over the place. And yeah, Ignite made me forced me to update this slide just a little bit. Flow got renamed to Power Automate, if you hadn't heard. Can anybody think of any other ones? Am I missing any? Knime. I have seen reference to that, but I haven't.
It was actually
Oh, cool.
similar.
Okay, I'll have to look into that. Knime. I have seen that, but I haven't looked into that one as well. Yeah, sorry. Oh, those are for me? Oh, thank you. Thank you. Oh, thank you. I am. Have you guys seen that Friends where Phoebe gets a cold? I'm hoping I have that going on, not the inverse of that. So, all right. So, Rich, we've narrowed down a path. We've figured out what we're going to do, but there are other questions we might need to ask as well before we embark on an actual AI project. I have seen, AI is very buzzy, very buzzwordy, very exciting for the bosses that want to come in and make change, and they're brought in to change whatever environments they're in. But I've seen some people go down the path just trying to do data. It's cool, but I feel like a lot of times people need to do the so what? Like, oh, that's neat. We analyzed this lump of data. What are you going to do with it? Does it make sense to spend the time, effort, energy, money to do those things? So these are just some questions. I won't run through these at length, but yeah, and a lot of times too, you need the answers to the questions you're trying to ask. So if you don't have the answer to the question you're trying to predict, you can't teach a machine, excuse me, you can't teach a machine to learn something you don't know yourself. So you need to have the quality data. A lot of times they have big dreams, not the data to support it. And you need a lot of it. And you need to make sure that you're including all groups, ethics and AI and those things as well. So, bonus round. So these are some of the considerations I've collected. I'm interested if you guys have any thoughts or if you've seen anything in your environments. But I've seen, again, bosses come in, they want to make change, they're trying to make an impact. They buy a whiz-bang something and say, here, implement this. This is, they don't give you the input in it. So I've seen teams fight tooth and nail because they weren't involved in the process to pick the technologies that the boss is bringing in. And then a lot of times, even if you're going to bring in a partner to do something, make sure you understand what it's going to look like after it's implemented. Sometimes people come in to do a project where they're doing business intelligence. They can go home and there's not much support that goes on after that, care and feeding of the report and model and those kind of things. But in data science, you need to make sure that your models are being accurate. I've heard so many times about people they've tested with a certain data set, they throw it in production, different data is being thrown at it, and the accuracy of the model did not account, the testing didn't account for those different data sets, and the accuracy is much lower than predicted. So you need to make sure that you're monitoring for those things. So if you have a data scientist come in and build something for you, do you understand what it's going to take after the fact to make sure that that model is accurate and it's getting the data that it needs? Excuse me. I've also seen teams be tasked with making AI happen. Here, go make AI happen in your free time on the weekends, kind of thing. So people just aren't psychologically going to, if I'm being tasked with something that I need to do extra, you're just setting your team up for failure in one way or the other. So I've seen that as well. Making sure they have the time to do it and not carving it out to, forcing somebody to learn Python to write a machine learning model on the weekend is not, it's probably not going to work. And then money. I've had bosses come to me with big dreams, little bitty checkbooks. So we have to kind of navigate those waters as well and figure out the thing that makes sense. So I know a lot of times people get frustrated at me as well when they're trying to go write a check for something. A lot of things in Azure are use what you need and turn it off, pause it, those kind of things. Sometimes it's a little bit harder to predict cost in Azure. So make sure you have a friend like me that can kind of help you navigate, and definitely make sure you know and understand in Azure the different things that can cost you money. A lot of times, easy buttons cost extra. Like for example, Cosmos DB. Developers love it. They can throw all kinds of junk into a Cosmos DB. A lot of those easy buttons can be expensive. So just make sure you understand all of the ins and outs of the different services and the different paths. Gene called out definitely premium. So that's going to be an additional cost. Make sure that you understand like the premium licensing and those things. So good deal. Questions, comments, thoughts? Yes, Gene.
So
Sure.
So I don't understand the business. Like, hey, we want this sales.
Mm-hmm.
Because I can add these numbers up. That sort of thing.
Sure.
So my question.
Mm-hmm.
Because I feel like that's higher than just regular.
Yeah, I mean, if you're doing something where you're actually building the model, you know the ins and outs and everything. Yeah, so that's been the big drive and why that Azure Machine Learning Services path. There's so many different metadata points, how much data you're throwing at it. There are so many different considerations. It's difficult, and you also have to kind of, I always feel like people, I show a lot of architecture diagrams where they're like, the big data stuff's over here, and then the BI is way over here. I feel like people need to come at it more from this side and figure out the question you're throwing at whatever you're doing, because so many times that's going to influence the back-end architecture. A lot of these distributed things, you need to go at it with the question like, what are the 3 main questions I'm really going to throw at this thing to make sure I'm laying out my data in a way that makes sense for it can weed out certain things. Man, that's a really great question. It's just difficult to weigh and know without knowing what you're trying to predict. If it's just an accuracy thing, that's making sure you're looking at it and validating that it is accurate, and you're throwing enough data and different types of data at it. Those kind of considerations. But yeah, that's a loaded question. Sure. yeah, no, but no, that's a really great discussion point, though. Yeah, another question. Yeah. Sure. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. The whole process.
Sure.
I feel like there's going to be
No, it's
long
fine.
silence.
Yeah, that's fair.
Recording.
Sorry. So you had a good point that there's a lot of prep work that goes into it. And my kind of concern is when they try to take AI to the masses, in reality, for a lot of this, there's a certain set of expertise that's necessary to do that either prep work or verification, and that it may not just be there, right? Like Power BI is awesome to let Kristen Accounting make amazing dashboards, but she may not have the skill set to make sure that linear regression that she did with flows is actually right. So I worry that there's going to be a skill gap as they try to push this technology out to everyone.
Thanks, Gene.
So, As a consultant, a lot of times this is the buzzword AI, and like we're talking about, a business comes in and says, "Hey, let's do this," and but then they ask, "How long is it going to take?" Right? Mm-hmm. So with some of these tools, it's easier, but like I said, there's a lot of work that happens beforehand with bringing the data in. Is this even the data that we can use to do the prediction, all that stuff? So how do you go back to those customers and kind of, are there any tips that you have that you can guide as like, hey, I don't know how long it's going to take because there's a lot of moving parts?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That is a good question. It depends. I hate to make you make faces at me like that when I say it depends. If you're building a model from scratch, that's definitely going to be a longer process. But the nice thing, especially on the parts in Azure, we do a lot of prototyping, like really quick and dirty, not necessarily throwing the entire data set at something. So there is definitely opportunity to do kind of a prototyping process. But yeah, timing-wise, like some of the things like doing a cognitive service, that's going to be a really quick and easy thing. So it depends on which path you're going to go down, how much, you might need to work into the process going to figure out and get that data. So it's it depends kind of question as well as far as timing, unfortunately. But there definitely are easier paths than, necessarily. For me to say how long it would take me to build a machine learning model, that's also a skill set consideration as well. Like if I'm trying to figure it out on my free time on the weekends, those are definitely considerations. So that's a hard thing to know. And even consultants that, they might have the technology figured out. There are different barriers there I always hate figuring out timing because a lot of times I'm waiting on some approval process, even for, somebody has to approve something. I'm waiting, an email is sitting in somebody's inbox. So I always hate figuring out timing. I've had MCS folks that are really kind of consultants in Microsoft say, "How long do you think it'll take?" I'm like, "Well, it'll take me an afternoon, but who are we talking about is going to build this thing?" So, yeah. Sorry, it depends. It depends. Any other questions? Comments? Thoughts? Yeah, back here.
Do this for the first time? No budget?
Yeah.
What method?
Yeah, I actually have in some of the references in the slides, there is a way, they have a new initiative now where you can get kind of 12 months free of certain different compute, especially like the cognitive services. You can get kind of a free trial for a year, actually. So yeah, there are definitely a lot of kind of, and that's probably not just the only way as well, but there are a lot of different options to kind of test it out. There are also different learning things. There's like the AI school where you can kind of walk through and do lab things as well. So there are various different options to kind of test and try. Yeah. Azure Notebooks, yes, no, thank you, yeah. Azure Notebooks is a great way to kind of test the waters with doing notebooks. It's more of a Jupyter notebook style if you're in that flavor, but you get free compute with it, which is really kind of a nice thing. I do a lot of workshops, and we do Azure Notebooks because it's very easy to kind of get everybody going and set up. It's not the quickest thing. You're not going to be, if you're doing genomic kind of, yeah, you probably don't want to do it in an Azure Notebook, but it is definitely, as you're learning, kind of going down that data science path, it is definitely a good option as well. What do you guys think? You guys are more prepared to handle the boss when he comes to you and saying, "We need to make AI happen"? Feedback. I really appreciate feedback. I am a little bit obsessed with presenting well, so give me some feedback and make sure if you think that people like me at Microsoft out in the field, if you think that our voice should be at pass, please do say that as well. So, and then here is my information. I'm on Twitter, probably more than I should be, and that's also my email. So I appreciate you guys coming and spending this hour with me. I really, really appreciate it. Thank you. And if you guys want, we can do research together this evening. So thank you guys. I appreciate it.